Thank you. So now it's Yom Kippur. Moses comes down with the second tablets. The next day, God tells Moses, because they're still, Sinai's done. They're still in the Sinai desert. They're still seeing the mountain, and they see the cloud of glory on the mountain. And now they've gone through a few months of turbulence, just recognizing their own humanity and their own frailty. That 48 days after they had this one-on-one experience with God, they're able to create a golden calf. God tells Moses that he's going to give them and the world a gift, that they'll be able to create a physical space where they'll be able to connect with God. Good morning. Where they can really reenact, they can relive the Sinai intimacy. And that is a tabernacle. Eventually it will become the Holy Temple of Jerusalem, but they're not built, they're in the desert, they're not building any structures, they can't build anything permanent. So they're given instructions for a mobile, collapsible tabernacle, which is going to have when it's set up, it's going to have capacity for intense spirituality and godliness and connection. But it's going to be, it's not only for the duration of the time in the desert, actually for a couple of 100 years until they get grounded in Israel and they build the temple. This is going to be the center of the Jewish civilization. It's called the Mishkan in Hebrew. It's the tabernacle in English. Now, in the Mishkan, so now the Torah describes a bunch of things that they have to do, special artifacts. There's no pictures in the Torah. It's all verbal descriptions, and you got to try to figure it out. But because there are no pictures, there are a few areas in Torah where we say, okay, you can read it this way, you can read it that way. How did it look? So, for example, and this isn't going to be the discussion today, in the menorah, you'll notice that in the menorahs that Chabad has popularized over the past 30, 40 years, the public menorahs that are out there, you can tell one that's a Chabad menorah because the arms are all angular. And the menorahs you grew up with, that you bought in a Judaic shop, usually would be curved branches. And the menorah that Chabad puts out is angular. I mean, straight angles. And the reason for that is not because we're trying to be distinctive, but because Maimonides actually did make some diagrams. And he does it that way. It's not clear from the Torah. Because even in the Talmud, the language that's used is alachson. It could mean, curved or slanted. And then, but since Maimonides defined it that way, and there's no one defining it otherwise, except for the Arch of Titus, and Titus is not an opinion in Jewish law. That's why we tend to go. It's the other ones are kosher, but we tend to go with his.
Even though the coinage that was issued a few years after that showed curved arms.
Right. So who issued the coinage?
The Israelis or the Hebrews. Let's put it that way.
No, in Rome.
Yes, there were.
I think that that was taken off the Arch of Titus. And I don't know if that the Jews did that, but it's that I don't know. But the idea that there were ones with curved. The question is, what's even on the Arch of Titus? It doesn't mean necessarily there were. It's not forbidden to make some menorahs. There were a lot of menorahs. They didn't have light bulbs, so the temple had candelabra all over the place. Maimonides is not maintaining that all of them were angular in that way. The holy menorah in the temple was that. Now, what's depicted in the Arch of Titus? We don't know. It's all stuff they got from the temple. I'm going to assume. So Today we're going to be talking about the menorah, but not about the branches. We're going to be talking about something else. In the language of the Torah, it's again, this is going to be something where it's not clear from the verbal picture how things worked out. So let's take a look at text one. I'm going to bring this up and share screen. Okay. So here, get this out of the way. Okay. It says, this is from this coming week's Torah portion. This coming Shabbos, this week's Torah portion. It says, God tells Moses, shall make a menorah of pure gold. The menorah shall be made of hammered work. Its base and its stem, its goblets, its knobs, and its flower shall all be one piece with it. So first of all, it's not supposed to be a composite. You're not soldering together different pieces. It's one lump of gold, and from that you create the entire menorah. In our depictions, you think about a menorah. There's a base, there's branches, and there's a place to hold the wicks. What the Torah actually describes is that there should be some decorations on the menorah, which are translated as goblets, knobs, and flowers. So, and then the Torah goes further. 6 branches coming out of its sides, 3 menorah branches on one side, 3 menorah branches on the other side, 3 decorated goblets on one branch, a knob and a flower. Now there's 3 goblets, a knob and a flower. 3 decorated goblets on one branch. In other words, not on one branch, on each branch. That's just the Torah's language, the way it's translated, a knob and a flower. So the 6 branches that come out of the menorah, each one has to have 3 goblets, a knob, and a flower. On the stem of the menorah shall be 4 decorated goblets, its knobs and its flowers. So the branches, 3 goblets, on the stem, 4 goblets, and in verse 35, a knob under the 2 branches from it, and a knob on the 2 branches from it, and a knob on the 2 branches from it. So for the 6 branches that come out of the menorah, the knobs and the branch shall all be one piece with it, as we said before. All of it should be one hammered mass of pure gold, and you shall make its lamp 7, and shall kindle its lamps so they shed light toward its face. Okay, so
I'm confused. We seem to be missing 2 branches. No, we're not missing 2 branches.
no, the menorah. You mean because of Hanukkah?
Right.
No. Hanukkah, the menorah in the temple had 7, 3 on each side and 1 in the center. That's the menorah of old. Hanukkah, because it was an 8-day holiday, the rabbis and we're not after the temple was destroyed. We're not supposed to mimic what was done in the temple. So it would be a problem for me to put up a 7-branch menorah and use it here, because it's as though I'm doing that service to the temple when the temple is destroyed. So the rabbis instituted a 9-branch menorah. Okay, it's meant to recall the 7-branch, but it's not a replica. Okay, so this is the Talmud, as we'll see. The Talmud talks about what the goblets are. Today we're going to talk about the goblets. And it's a chalice that they used to use in Alexandria, Egypt. But first, I want to take a look at, here Maimonides made a diagram. And let me get this out of the way. In his here we write, in his commentary tractate Menachot, this is in the Talmud, Maimonides draws a picture of the Beit HaMikdash's menorah, the temple menorah. So if you look at it, these are the chalices.
I don't think so.
These give me the Super Bowl.
A little early for that.
The technology is not as reliable as we'd like, right? But I guess. There we go. In his commentary to Tractate Menachot, says, let me get through this. Maimonides draws a picture of the Beit HaMikdash's menorah. So you take a look. So there's this little ball or half a ball. Those are the flowers and the goblets, and the what do they call them here? They're the rimonim. They're called the knobs. But then these are the goblets. So the goblets were narrow at the bottom and wide at the top. So what you see about these goblets is that they're all upside down. It doesn't say that in Torah, it just says goblets. Many of the commentaries just assume you have a goblet. Why would it be upside down? It should be right side up. Maimonides, without a source directly stating this in the Talmud or the Talmudic, the Talmudic branches of commentaries, he writes this diagram, makes this diagram, and tells us something that we really wouldn't have come to this conclusion on our own. And this is what we want to talk about today. What does this mean? Let's look at text 2. Let's look at the Talmud. That's the primary source. Talmud tells us, what did the goblets of menorah look like? They were like Alexandrian chalices. How do I know what an Alexandrian chalice is? Anything more than a Manhattan chalice? Thank God we have Maimonides. Maimonides lived in Egypt. He knew Alexandria. What is that? What's an Alexandrian chalice? The goblets resembled Alexandrian chalices. They had wide mouths and narrow bases. Okay. So if you in Maimonides, and he never claimed to be an artist, but in his diagram, he has like coming to a point. You can't really have a chalice with a point because you want to put it down on the table. But he's conveying there that it was narrow at the bottom and then wide at the top. And what is
The triangles in that picture are the goblets?
Yes, these are goblets. There's like a half, what looks like a semicircle.
Yeah.
That was the flower. You know, he wasn't doing an arts and crafts project. He was just giving us an approximation. Then what we call knobs, which are really in the language of the Torah, they're pomegranates. Something round, but a golden something like that. That's that. And then these are the chalices. And as you can see, the wide part is at the bottom, so they're upside down. So let's see. Second.
Not on the base. Not on the center.
They actually are in the center too. What you see on these is the flowers, like a half circle. It's not clear here. So you look in the book, it should be a little clearer here. There's the third one down is an upside down chalice. So what Maimonides writes in text 3 is that the goblets resembled Alexandrian chalices that had wide mouths and narrow bases. Okay. So what?
Why are they upside down?
That's what we're asking about. Where did Maimonides get this? Why does he put that? What's the point in them being upside down? That's the point of this.
That's what we're here.
That's what we're here to find out. That's what the Rebbe once put on the table. He says, look, I don't know if you know this, but he made a diagram. Why in the world would he have made them upside down? Now, it becomes a little more curious because we have a rule in the Talmud that when in the construction of the tabernacle, where there's a lot of natural objects, everything had to be used in the manner of its growth, in its natural state, which means there was a lumber, there were beams of acacia wood, to put them in a way that where the wood, the bottom was, which is where the trunk was, and then going up. It had to be in its way of growth. And as the Talmud says, one fulfills their obligation only when mitzvahs are used in the manner of their growth. As the verse states, acacia wood standing upward. You use a lulav and an esrog on sukkahs. They're natural. When we're to use them upside down is not the mitzvah. We use the lulav in the way it grows, all the branches in the way they grow, and also the esrog has to be in its more in its natural form and state. Now, a chalice doesn't grow, but its natural state is a cup, is right side up. So here, let's take a look at the text 5. Let's get into what was the function of the menorah. Function of the menorah was, on the one hand, it was to create light. But like we said before, there was no electricity. So you think that here where the menorah was, there were throughout the building there had to be these candelabras. That's how people knew where to walk. In the holy area, they also needed light. That's not the case. That's not the reason. The reason for the menorah was to shed light to the world. And as we say, even there in the temple, it says, we're told that there was a pillar of fire that went with the Jews. They didn't need that for a light, for illumination, they didn't need the menorah. The menorah was about spreading spiritual light out to the world. And one example of that is in text 5, in the book of Kings, where it describes the building of the temple. Not the tabernacle. Eventually, when the temple that we, when we go to Jerusalem and we see the Western Wall, that's the Temple Mount, and there was a big, magnificent building. So it says about King Solomon, he made shkufim atumim windows for the temple. What's shkufim atumim? Can't get it in Home Depot. Shkufim atumim are two words that one means that they dispersed, right? And one is that they were very narrow. So what does that mean? In the days of old, they would have, just before there were windows, what did you do? You made holes in the wall for light. So first, the hole in the wall, you didn't want animals or people coming through. So the outside would be narrower, and on the inside, it was usually stone or whatever it was. The inside, we could have made it more a wider mouth to disperse light into the house. So it'd be narrow on the outside, wide on the inside. What King Solomon did was he made the windows of the temple wide on the outside and narrow on the inside. Why? Because we don't need the light. We're in the business of shedding light. The windows were not there to bring light into the room. The windows were there as portals to send light out to the world. God took care of the light inside the temple. So that's what the verse says. He made these types of windows, which were odd because they're not well engineered for bringing light, for illuminating a room. Because that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to spread the light of the temple out to the world. And if you look at text 6a, it says, when somebody makes windows, this is from the Medrash, they make them wide on the inside and narrow on the outside. Well, that's why. So they should draw the light in. But the windows in the Beit HaMikdash were not like this. Rather, they were wide on the outside and narrow on the inside. Now, why would that have been? As I just mentioned, why? So that light should spread outward from the Holy Temple and illuminate the world. So this is a critical part of this whole conversation. The purpose of the temple, the purpose of the menorah, and our purpose is to bring light to the world. They're not going to bring it here, but one of the things it says, why do we have a lunar calendar? The Talmud says we count according to the moon because we resemble the moon. How do we resemble the moon? The moon's function is to shed the light of the sun, to be able to illuminate a world. That's the Jewish mission. That we're able to bring light, to reflect God's light, so to speak. The temple had that this was the idea of bringing godliness to the world, and its structure showed that, because why? Those are weird windows, unless what you're trying to do is get light out, not bring light in. And we'll see in text 7, the Talmud says about there with the tabernacle, with the menorah. Well, why did God give the menorah? Does God require its light? Didn't the children of Israel travel for 40 years in the desert exclusively by his light? They said that there was this pillar of fire at one of it. Rather, its light, the light of the menorah, is a testimony to the world that the divine presence rests among us. This is something, the light was something more as a sign to the world than as a medium of illumination. So, having said that, so the Rebbe offered an insight into why Maimonides took it as logical, because it doesn't have any clear source in the Talmud. He said logically there had to be upside down cups. He said if it was all about bringing God's light to the world, this, if I had a cup here, that I use, let's show them how. So if I have a cup like this, that's the way I keep it. That's for me to hold the drink. If it stays this the whole time, then I haven't gotten my drink. If someone poured a good wine into this cup as a gift to me, and I just left it here, then I haven't gotten the person's gift. I have to turn it upside and bottoms up. So the idea of what the Rebbe was saying is, and earlier writers mentioned that the cups are about receiving and giving God's light to the world, but they don't write that the cups are upside down, because you need a cup to like this to receive and like this to give. So Maimonides' approach was, and he took this as he didn't even explain himself, that it must be about the shedding of light. That's one metaphor, or pouring of blessing. It had to be upside down cups, which indicate the pouring of blessing to the world. Let's take a look at this. This is from the Rebbe. When the cup's purpose is for holding liquid, then its natural state is for the base to be on the bottom and the opening to be upright on top, like this. But the cups on the menorah symbolized the idea of irrigating, in other words, sharing blessing with and illuminating the world. So the natural state was the opposite way, with the opening on the bottom and the base on top. No, the opening is on top. They just mistranslated that. Or the base, I guess. Yeah, the base on top, the opening on the bottom. Yes, we turn the glass upside down so we can pour from it. In other words, that it's the bottom is on top and the top. Okay. So now let's bring this to our personal lives. We're looking at this one, Maimonides things, and so actually let's just go back to the diagram. So what he's saying is that if the Torah describes cups, and this is all about shedding light to the world, or bringing God's flow of blessing to the world, then the cups are obviously, they're all pointing down, because it's God bringing, sharing God's blessing, the stream of blessing with us. Spreading it out, yeah. Okay, now. So now let's go to text 9 and bring it more personally. We're each considered like a lamp. The Proverbs, this verse says that the soul of the human is God's flame. What do you mean a God's flame? What does a flame do? A flame illuminates, a flame warms. We are all put on this earth, with this, our souls, to be able to brighten the world, to illuminate the world, to warm up the world. That's all of us. That's what our souls are. Whether we feel it or not, that's what the Torah says. We are each lamps, designed to be. Now, a great Sephardic an early, a great Sephardic leader from the 1800s, writes along these lines. He said, it's known that the soul derives pleasure from lighting candles. People like candles. People like light. It becomes excited from the enjoyment of the light, for it itself is a piece of light. Why do we have this natural human tendency to like light? Or many spiritual streams light candles. There's something spiritual about candles. It's because we ourselves, our own spirituality, our soul, is metaphorically a candle. Therefore, it's drawn after its kind, light, even though one is a physical flame and the soul is a pure spiritual abstract light. It's just metaphoric. There's not actually some candle inside of us. But the Torah calls it God's flame. Because, nevertheless, both are a type of light in our world. This is why King Solomon compares the soul to a light. As the verse states, a person's soul is God's lamp. And here, in text 11, the Rebbe used this also to find it a little bit more. Said it can be that with regard to our own spiritual journey, our base is narrow and limited. This could be at the beginning of our journey, or even later on for whatever reason. When it comes to influencing another person, especially when it comes to influencing the world at large to make it into a home for God, we must know that we must engage in the service without any limitations. Our state must be of a wide open upside down goblet. So here's the Rebbe's thought. Said, so Maimonides says, oh, there's a special lesson. There's an upside down goblet, giving. And we have to be givers. We have to be an upside down goblet. What's the lesson in having specifically a narrow bottom and a wide top? So this is how the Rebbe put it. The Rebbe wanted us all to be leaders. So he really saw that that's what God wants. Everybody has the capacity, has a sphere of influence, and they can make a difference. I've mentioned before, Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, wrote that when his first meeting with the Rebbe, he came in expecting to find a man trying to to attract followers, and he realized he was actually a man trying to create leaders. We all leaders in our own sphere of influence. And the Rebbe spent 50 years trying to chip away at that because many of us don't see ourselves as leaders. I'm not a leader. I got my job. I do my thing. And he was trying to change that mindset. And especially when it comes to Judaism, though, because for me, I'm not a leader. Go find some rabbi. What do you want from me? I barely went to Hebrew school. And the Rebbe's point was, everybody has something to share. They may not know the difference between an aleph and a bet, but if they have some sense of Jewish feeling and knowledge, they should share it. Now, it's understandable for a person to be a little shy about that because I'm not a physicist, and just because I read a couple of books here and there, I wouldn't have the chutzpah to go and start teaching people physics. What do I know? Not for me. We can dabble in it, just sprinkle in it until Gennady it corrects me. It's for a person with saying Judaism, I'm not going to spread it. How can I be a leader? So what the Rebbe was saying was that even with what we consider a small, narrow base of knowledge, even if it's only an aleph or not even an aleph, turning it upside down means that we're letting it go. Don't be shy. Share something good. We can inspire people. Can inspire people with something you'd think, such a big deal. We put a dreidel outside. There's no ritual value to it on Hanukkah. No ritual value. There's nothing special about it. For years, it was poorly painted, but I would hear through the year. I drove by, I remembered it was Hanukkah. I told my kids, we can do. People and especially someone who's not a likely source of that inspiration. I have a classmate who was in business, and he inherited his business from his father. They do quite well. And I was meeting out here in New Jersey with a Catholic real estate guy, definitely not Jewish, and we were just talking about something, and he said, he threw, this is how I look. He said, "Do you know this name?" So I do. We were classmates. How do you know? He said, we have some buildings together. I said, "Oh, cool." He said, "I respect that guy." I go, "Why?" He said, "Because we're in the middle of a deal, and it got late, and he said he has to step out for 15 minutes because he has to do afternoon services." He said, "We're in the middle of making money." But he took the time off. That friend of mine didn't teach him anything. He didn't have any sermons. He didn't teach him Aleph, Arbet. He acted in a way that was that inspired. And that really was the Rebbe's point. And here is saying a wide open upside down goblet means no restrictions. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about how little you know. Don't worry about what people are going to think. Don't worry about it. Just share. Bring light to the world. Here in text 12, it's also from the Rebbe. Just as we work on improving ourselves, so must we, hang on a second, so must we engage with others as well. We must not rationalize. I still have plenty of work to do. I have plenty of work to do on myself, knowing myself and my flaws. So what right do I have to influence others? Like I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a teacher. I don't want to let you know what I don't do, what I do. I'm not gonna, just because I know Aleph, I'm not gonna go teach that. And the Rebbe said, don't be so shy. He would say it's misplaced humility. Rather, as the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe said, known as the Rebbe Rashab, we have no idea what still needs to be accomplished in the task of preparing the world for the Erev Mashiach. So we must not make any rationalizations. Any opportunity we encounter, we must immediately seize. To take this further back in time, Maimonides gave us a mindset that he said is a very constructive mindset that he advocates. Always, he says, envision the world equally balanced between good and not good. And your next action tips the scale on a global level. I don't know what's going on in the world, but God does. And to think that even though I have this little mitzvah to do, and without getting too grandiose in our own minds, but to recognize to God every action makes a difference. And if the world is indeed equally balanced, this isn't just me helping out some person who no one else knows and no one's going to know it. It's not a headline grabbing action. I just impacted the whole world. That's what Maimonides says. Think about that. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe framed it differently. He said the world has to shift for good. We call that the Erev Mashiach. We don't know which mitzvah can bring us over the goal line. It could be a great rabbi doing something, or it could be a very simple person doing what they consider a minor mitzvah, but there's no such thing as a minor mitzvah. Mitzvah is a mitzvah. And therefore, any inspiration we can share, we should grab that opportunity. And here we go to text 13. This is the Rebbe. This is from a very recent book or article, but it says it's telling an anecdote that a college student once approached the Rebbe in the middle of a Hasidic gathering to greet him with a l'chaim. The Rebbe turned to him and asked him if he was involved in encouraging and helping his fellow students to put on tefillin every day. But the Rebbe admitted the young man, I don't put on tefillin every day. I'm going to stop putting on tefillin with other people. And the Rebbe smiled and said, why is that their problem? You can help. You don't put on tefillin? Put on tefillin. You're not going to put on tefillin. Meanwhile, don't let that hold you back from helping someone else. And this was a very important motif and mindset of the Rebbe's. If there's something good you can do it. You have excuses why you're not suitable. So that's not coming from a good place. Any calculation that gets in the way of you doing something good to make the world better, It's not a holy calculation. It's an ego calculation. It's shyness, whatever it may be. It's do what you can do. Actually, one of the rabbis here in New Jersey, his mother just passed away. She was there. They were Chabad representatives in Maryland, Baltimore. I never knew his mother. I know her family. I don't know. She's a lot older than me. But he said his mother, who never put on tefillin in her life, she didn't do it. It's not in the women's menu. She would go around. He said tens of thousands of sisters. He says, I'm not exaggerating. Tens of thousands of people put on tefillin because of my mother. She would grab somebody, some student or my father or whatever, and she would run around. And she had a strong personality. She'd say, "Did you put on tefillin? Oh, come." And she would go to fairs and do it. She'd say, "I never put on tefillin myself. Who cares? If you can inspire someone, and it's not only about tefillin, so lighting Shabbos against about anything. Doing that, being able to help illuminate someone else's life, to bring Judaism or spirituality to someone else's life, we shouldn't look for excuses not to, or we shouldn't accept excuses not to. And here's their tagline: if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. Okay. This is a shorter one today. It says key points. In Maimonides' sketch of the menorah, the goblets are curiously depicted upside down. Number 2, the windows of the Beit HaMikdash were also constructed in a counterintuitive manner, because the narrow side was on the inside and the wide side on the outside. Number 3, the windows of the Beit HaMikdash were designed this way to indicate that the Beit HaMikdash did not need light. Rather, it would spread its light into the world. As we spoke about before, that you looking at the building, you just from the architecture, you realize this was not a normal building which was trying to bring light in. It was a building trying to bring light out. Next one, the goblets of the menorah were upside down for the same reason, to indicate the outpouring of the menorah's godly light. Next, the human soul is a lamp. Like the menorah, it is natural for the soul to shine its light onto others. And finally, it is not a person's responsibility to calculate whether they are worthy of influencing others. The important thing is to act. If you have something to share, share it. So I'm going to stop this share.
Acacia wood from Lebanon.
Say it again.
The acacia wood from Lebanon.
Acacia wood was a lot of in Lebanon. Yes. Don't go there today to gather. But yes, the idea of the tabernacle, and one of the things that the Torah portion says, that create for me a tabernacle and I will dwell within them, not within it. And the point is that we should each be making ourselves into a receptacle, a sanctuary of God's, to be able to connect with God and be able to share the holiness and spirituality. Any questions? Okay. Have a great week. Can't guarantee it's going to be this short next time.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Thank you.